Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Aussie writers and other creatives.
Hello, and I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well, and Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, ideas, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business.
Hi again, Lynn. Hi, everybody. I think this might be our 101st episode.
It is.
we missed like saying the last one was actually 100 episodes, didn't we? But yeah, I'm getting in there.
We did. Yeah, it's very exciting to be into the second 100, Rach. I think it's great. And also, we're into our third year, obviously, too. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, just starting. Yeah, we've done 2 years. So it's great to be back here on the Zoom with you. And
Yes.
And we've had so many amazing guests in that time. And we've got another one today who I'm very excited because I'm pretty sure I'm on my screens way too much.
Me too. Look, I think we all are. But we are chatting to Jocelyn Brewer, who is all about digital nutrition, which I think is a pretty fascinating topic. I'm just going to read a little bio for Jocelyn first. She's a teacher and a psychologist. She's the founder of Digital Nutrition, which was developed as a positive framework for considering the impacts of digital devices, social media, video games, and our constant connectivity on our well-being. She shares the digital nutrition philosophy with high school students, teachers and parents, as well as across allied health services and sporting and corporate organisations.
Oh, welcome, Jocelyn. So great to have you join us.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Always love a chat.
Well, Rachel and I are all about the chat. So
I can imagine you must be extremely popular at high schools, hey?
Well, when I used to go to them, we haven't really done anything in schools for 2 years, but hopefully 2022, I'll have a couple of new fantastic team members that I will be launching and talking about in the new year. So some people delivering in high school for me when we can get back. Yeah.
All the kids like shoving their devices down in their pockets and hiding them.
Yeah, well, they always think I'm going to say, oh, it's really bad. So they're really surprised, and parents are really surprised when I start talking about the positives and how we can actually hack back control from our devices. It's not about banning them. I think banning them is a ridiculous notion in nearly 2022. We really have to learn to live with, we're learning to live with viruses and things like that, learning to live with devices and being able to manage that using the most complex piece of technology on the planet, which lives under our skulls. We forget how powerful that really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, true. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jocelyn, because you did start as a teacher, so I can see why that'd be great dealing with schools. Yeah. And then you trained as a psychologist?
Yeah, I did. And even before I was a teacher, look, I was working on the front desk of Centrelink for a while there, trying to work out how I could make a difference. And I kind of went from there thinking, I should probably get into education. And when I got a scholarship to retrain as a school counsellor, that's when I kind of became a psychologist. And part of that retraining program, I had to do a project. And my principal at the time, an excellent educator, Dr. Kim Jager at Sydney Boys High, said, you should look at what's going on with young people and gaming. And I was like, okay, let's check it out. And that was 13 years ago. And I'm like a dog with a bone. I really haven't put the topic down. It's exploded, obviously, and the conversation has morphed and changed a lot around gaming, but around social media, the impacts on mental health, the impacts generally on where our society is going, misinformation, all of those things have really kind of shifted and changed and become much more central. So in 2013, I kind of came up with this notion of digital nutrition as a pushback really to the idea that was going around to digital detoxing, that to me just kind of creeped onto diet culture, which we know is really unhelpful, to try and give a much more positive and empowered view of like where do devices sit, especially I guess for people, for many of us, where being in front of a screen is part of our work and part of our lives. It's a tool, and lots of people, social media managers. For a while, I was even doing social media strategy at TAFE. And we're like, what do we do when this is so much a part of, your waking hours?
It is. It's such a fascinating topic, isn't it? And I love how you talk about, well, we have to learn to live with it rather than like go down this detoxing path. I watched that Netflix. You've probably seen the Netflix. What is it? The social dilemma? Yeah. And that just scared the pants off me as the mum of a 7-year-old, because I know what's coming. And we're already setting these half an hour a day limits, and you can have 15 minutes time, like 2 lots of 15 minutes or half an hour at once. But yeah, I mean, so you really kind of focus in on that area now, that digital nutrition is your specialty.
Yeah. And cyberpsychology, which, when you think about jobs of the future that maybe, your 7-year-old and my 4-year-old might have, I have a job of the future, because 15 years ago when I was sort of, starting to do this work, that didn't exist. So being a cyberpsychology researcher and really looking at exactly what's going on here is this emerging area. And I think there's a lot of misinformation even in that space. So even when I watched The Social Dilemma, I think, well, where were the strategies? They were literally in the bloopers roll. Like when you watch the credits, people are like, oh, this is some of the things that you could do now that you've been literally scared into freaking out, rather than facting up on how do you manage that? How do you have conversations? So I think we'll probably get into the screen time conversation shortly, but are we focusing too much on counting digital calories in the form of time online, rather than looking at what are the virtual vitamins? What is actually in that half an hour that you give your kid, or the 3 hours that you have yourself?
Yeah.
So there's lots to it, so many nuances, I guess, that something like The Social Dilemma, which is just this martyrdom from tech bros going, oh yeah, I designed this thing, it was really bad. Like, thanks, mate. Like, give me a solution.
Yeah. I love that you're solution focused. All right, great.
Well, that is great, because there are some downsides. What sort of downsides do you see from people using social media and their devices too much?
Yeah, so obviously we only have 24 hours in a day. So if you're using technology more, then something's probably got to give. Most of what we see is there's an impact on sleep. And again, not just with young people. I guess the main way my work's changed is it's changed from the focus on young people to actually us as adults. Things like revenge bedtime procrastination, you might have heard of, which is kind of where we take back our time, which is usually in the evening when kids have gone to bed and all, the dust has settled, that rather than going to sleep, we're just filling our brains with more kind of, informational junk. Even though depending on what, series you're watching and all of that kind of stuff. So sleep tends to get impacted. Our movement and our exercise sometimes is displaced. And that obviously, those two things really for me are pillars of well-being. So when I work with clients as a psychologist, they're the two things that I'll check in with, like, how's your sleep? And how much exercise are you getting? Because they're going to really influence your mental health. And then obviously there's a lot of conversation about the impacts of things like social media on mental health. And the answer, or the summary of the research there is it's complex, and we're not doing fantastic research. The data that came out of that Facebook leak was actually really crappy data. It's not necessarily something we want to peg too much on. And we need to get better at that research in order to really examine the impacts well.
So how do you know, though, that you have a problem? Are there any signs to look for?
Yeah, so the way that most clinicians would kind of look at an addiction sort of level, like where it's really going a bit wonky, not just, oh, it's a guilty pleasure, is using the same criteria that we would use in gambling. And these are called process or behavioral addictions. They're very, very different to a substance use disorders. So we're looking at withdrawal, we're looking at maybe hiding what you're doing, needing more and more time online to kind of have that relief or have that kind of escape, those sorts of things. Really, the way that shows up is impact on the quality of your work, impact on the quality of your relationships, all those areas of life, the wheels sort of start to come off and there start to be issues around that. So again, for some people, they might really, really, really need 8 hours sleep. Otherwise, they can't function. So depending on your particular vulnerabilities and your own kind of resilience, then that might, it's different for everyone, I guess. There's not a one size fits all. People like to also talk about addiction to your phone or addiction to social media. That's problematic as well. We don't, even within gambling, we don't say, oh, that person's addicted to the race course or to the poker machines or to the different forms of gambling. So you're not technically addicted to your phone, because without the internet and the apps, the phone is probably like a brick. Actually, we're probably addicted, if anything, to connection to one another, because most of what we're doing online is connection, is being a part of a community.
I want to slip in another parenting question, because I know that a lot of our listeners will have kids and will just be desperate to, kind of pick your brains about that aspect of it, especially when you have young girls or, girls in that tricky stage. They're on Instagram, they want to be on Instagram. I mean, how do you navigate that and the dangers of it, I suppose, for their mental health?
Yeah. So first of all, you really try to push back against young people being on social media platforms until they're 13. And we really need to examine the peer pressure that happens in that. We wouldn't say, oh, yeah, I really do think that you're ready to get your license and you're only 14. I'm going to let you do it a couple of years early. We need to think about it like that, because their brains are simply not developed to take on the responsibility and the complexity of those spaces. The second thing that we would do is curate our feeds so that we're not exposed to some of the more basic or unhelpful standards of beauty. So if you follow some hashtags, and they change all the time, like what the best ones are, but F Your Beauty Standards is a really great one. There's a fantastic people sharing really normal bodies and talking about really effectively, and not just on Instagram. Like, we need to forget Instagram. It's all about TikTok, people. We're going to make ourselves seem very old if we talk about Instagram, because it's, like boomer book, Facebook, boomer book. That's sort of seen all in one big chunk. And obviously they've just rebranded as Meta and are trying to get into the metaverse and all of that sort of stuff. But we can take control of the virtual kind of spaces and kind of have more virtual vitamins in that by curating the feed and feeding the algorithm what we really want to know. Literally by clicking on the right things and scrolling past or hiding ads that we don't want to see.
Oh, interesting.
There was also like this very interesting thread. I think Rebecca Sparrow started it on Facebook the other day, and it was all about sleepover and what you do with the devices at sleepovers and how parents should get involved when there's bullying at those kinds of, sleepover events. I mean, what do you think about all of that? You're obviously familiar with that thread.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think what's fantastic about that is we as parents have to really have tough conversations together about our own values and our own ways of managing things, so that we're really transparent about those tricky conversations. Back in my day, my mum would ring Amy West's mum and check that we were really doing what we would say. And they had that kind of more open dialogue, whereas I feel like we're really apologetic. Like, as parents, we're like, I don't want to like make the other mum think I'm actually doing some mumming here, rather than saying, hey, when I do this, this is how I'm going to roll. Do you have any problems or feedback or suggestions? What do you notice? What do you see? So that there's that kind of like, not that kind of tippy-toeing around with what's going on, I think. So look, it depends on the age of the kids too. So 14 is really different to 12 and then different niches of kids as well. So if you've got kids who are really into manga and anime, that's a different kind of conversation or different niche to maybe some kids who have different interests.
I think one of the things I've discovered about social media over the last sort of 10 or 15 years, and that's back to being a parent and even in the sort of freelancing work life, is that sometimes the consequences of how people use social media is not the way it's initially presented. So Instagram, say, is often about, people sharing their lives and around them, but instead it became a much more thing about fashion and body images and the whole influencers thing, which is good. And TikTok is different. And sometimes I find that, having had lots of teenagers, or 3, the way they use it is quite different from the way my clients use it.
Absolutely.
And that's often my clients who are builders and stuff, they use it for a whole different, within a building community, there's a whole Instagram and they share each other's projects and tag, the bricks and the tilers, which is totally different way to way my 19-year-old uses it.
Of course. And it's kind of like, if you think about it like being a magazine, if I go to the newsagent and I walk past the home and garden kind of section, that's really different over on the other side, the business section, or even the porn section, right? Remember that section of the newsagent? And there's a lot of like full service sex workers. There's all sorts of people on Instagram, not necessarily showing that, but they use that as a tool. And that's become a little bit of a difficulty with some of the changes with how the people in the sex industry actually haven't been able to have that as a connection tool. And that's always done relatively respectfully too, but it's in the same newsagent. It's just that one digital channel. So if you feed the algorithm, it will pop up. It will narrow and narrow and narrow the focus of the stuff that you get. So if you think about the algorithm, you walk into Sizzler, there's a little bit of everything, all the different types of food. But if you go straight to the pasta, you'll just keep getting fed different types of pasta. So that's my kind of really blunt way of explaining the algorithm. Unfortunately, it's obviously much more complicated than that, because it's pulling data from absolutely everywhere, because you've been feeding not just the algorithm, but the entire online ecosystem for decades, probably.
Gosh, it's so fascinating talking to you.
Well, it is, because I know I do spend a bit too much time on screens, and of course the challenge is that so much of it is important for my job. I'm writing on screens. I'm often doing social media for clients, but I have to confess I do waste a lot of time. So what sort of suggestions would you have to help me cut down or be more curated in my choices?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is, I would say, give yourself a break on the time. Maybe notice it, but don't be too focused on it. I suggest the 3 M's of digital nutrition, which are mindful, meaningful, and moderate. So you're being really mindful about, okay, I'm about to go and waste some time. I think if you're conscious that you're wasting time, it's probably not a waste of time to begin with. It's just maybe a guilty pleasure, or you need a break or whatever. So mindful, being really present, really switching on that, apparatus under your skull. Meaningful, that it's aligned to your goals and values. So, again, I use, let's say Facebook. There's lots of psychological groups and, resource sharing and things like that. That's most of what shows up in that space for me these days.
Same.
So, if you've curated that algorithm, then you're probably getting a lot of meaningful content that's aligned to the stuff that you care about. Is that a waste of time? Probably not. And then finally, moderate. So yes, time is a factor, but also moderating your time online, but moderating how you respond. So you might find if you're a little bit tired or a little bit stressed, that you get drawn into some of those online conversations and you find yourself spending lots of time commenting on a completely meaningless thread.
I think we've all been there.
And getting really easily outraged because of a thing called the digital disinhibition effect, where because you're not looking at people, you're not looking at the person on the other side of the post, you just smash out a reply, sometimes sarcastically, and you forget your emoji, and somebody's like taking it the wrong way and it starts a bit of a comment war. So moderating your responses can be really helpful. And again, it's just all metacognition. It's thinking about your actions and your thoughts and how you're feeling and all of those sorts of things while you're online, being intentional and intelligent.
Interesting. I do want to zero in on the time thing, even though you said don't look at the time so much, because you get those little reports from your phone that say this week you've spent X amount of hours. I mean, is there a kind of if you've got 24 hours in the day and you're spending 12 hours online, is that a problem? Again, asking for a friend.
what are you doing online? So, if you are spending 12 hours binging a TV show because you've got COVID, you're stuck at home, you can't move, it's raining, it's winter, that's really different to I spent 12 hours online finishing my thesis, researching, writing up a project, blah, blah, blah. I think we need to look at the context of what we're doing. So if the context is work, that kind of isn't counted even in screen time. If the content and the cognitions of that is I'm escaping my life and I'm ignoring really important stuff that I should be tackling, that's kind of different. And that's really hard to kind of map. Like, what am I thinking when I'm online? I'm thinking I'm going to write the most amazing article, or I'm going to write this incredible content that goes viral for my clients. Tapping into those things, I think then will help direct how much time, right? So if you've got quality content and you're not just watching absolute mindless crap, then that's going to be really, really different that's going to shape out the time that you spend, because you're going to be able to go, oh, that half an hour was great, time to move on.
And do you think in the case of freelancers who perhaps, have that freedom, there isn't a boss breathing over your shoulder.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Creating those strategies to be more efficient online. I think batching social media can be one of them. Have you got any other really good tips for freelancers?
Time boxing. If you haven't come across time boxing yet, both Cal Newport and Nir Eyal talk about these things. So Cal Newport is the author of several books now, but Deep Work is probably the most interesting for freelancers who really need to get in and get that kind of work with your golden hours, the hours that you're most productive in. And again, different people, sometimes morning people, late night people. I think the two of you are quite different from what I hear.
Yes.
Being able to work with that and being able to be really clear about what activity you're working on, to monotask like a ninja, rather than thinking we can be doing 27 different things and be doing them well. We absolutely cannot. We get distracted, our brains go off, and then we're like, oh, I've only written 100 words of that, 1,500 word article that's due in 2 hours. So some of these strategies are, just like looking at your time boxing, batching your notifications, not checking email or having email open all the time, having really strong guardrails around, like, even your automated responses. You might have a response that says, got your email, I take 24 hours to reply, sit tight, right? Different people have different expectations. Some of those sorts of things are really, really helpful.
Creating those boundaries around your time. I think we put something in the wrap up, which is our big Rachel's List, our big newsletter that we do every Friday night. And we put something in about using your email signature to create those boundaries around your time.
Absolutely. So if you read mine says, this is a calm inbox. I do not react and respond. I am meticulous with my emails, but life is too short to be constantly on email and to be sending long emails. So don't be offended if you get a really brief response from me with an emoji to try and say, it's all good, but we don't need all those kind of fluffy things going on. I don't need a big, long, bloody story. I need to know what I'm doing. And, like the inbox zero kind of concept too, I think, like screen time and managing that is just another thing that makes us feel hopeless. And I kind of promote an idea of inbox manageable. Like, you just have to be able to use it, like unsubscribe from the crap, only let the most important stuff in your eyeballs in that main inbox that you have. Lots of little things that work for different people. Lots of online tools. I really like Freedom as a tool, but there's Rescue Time. There's all sorts of different kind of focus tools and productivity tools. I think the trick there again is that we're constantly looking for another productivity tool rather than just coming back to basics. I like a good old piece of paper with, like some hours chunked in what I'm going to do and then what I did. I set an alarm for about every 45 minutes. So I'll work for 45 minutes and then I'll have to like put in to my little diary thing, like, what did I say I was going to do? Then what did I actually do? So there's an accountability pact within that, which is something, again, Nir Eyal talks about in Indistractable, which I think is a bloody
another great book.
Fantastic.
I think, the best thing I ever did was turn off all the notifications on my phone.
Absolutely.
Because somebody said that in a podcast or something, and I thought that's great. And obviously when it probably makes me more intentional, back to your practice, without the way you said, without actually consciously doing it, because I only pick up my phone when I want to now. Whereas before I used to always see it sort of tweaking and beeping at me,
Mm-hmm.
and now I don't.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. And also my new computer, it's really easy to put on do not disturb.
So I think that the tech companies have gotten a lot better at giving us tools that we can curate how we want to be distracted and whether or how we want to focus. So having your phone out of sight is literally out of mind. That it gives you a nudge. Like, I charge my phone in the kitchen, so if I want to go and get it, I have to go, now I've got to go and walk there. Not like that's like a huge deal, but it gives us the opportunity to interrupt that automatic cheeky check and think, okay, it's not actually what I want to be doing. What do I need to sit with? That discomfort that Nia would talk about, and why I'm getting distracted is managing those triggers and self-regulating.
Yeah, fantastic.
I guess one of the things that I've found difficult in these last 6 months is because so many more workplaces are online and everything. So with my clients, I've got a lot of clients, and some use Microsoft Teams and some use Slack and Zoom, and I've actually become sucked into a lot more digital tools with clients and my workplace. How do you manage that? That's quite
I want someone to build, some geeky person to build a thing where it can send all of the kind of communication into one bucket and just plop it down in front of me in one spot, because I too have to be, some people are on Zoom, some are on Teams, some use Google Workspaces, then you've got Slack, Asana, Trello, like, oh my gosh. And because there's no consistency, we're, quite agnostic in these sorts of things, you do have to have logins for all of that. The main thing I would say with that, they're all just different versions of the same thing. Have a password manager, right? If you use a password manager, you will have strong passwords. So even though, yes, you have to log into a million different places, the strong password manager, you can delete that mental load of having to remember, what combination of my old flatmate and child and house that I used to live in or whatever password is this. You remember one strong one, it looks after it all for you, and really protects you against some of those kind of hacking disasters that I hear about quite regularly that really interrupt people's work life.
I think as well it comes down to, we're also into Zoom, that perhaps there's so many unnecessary Zoom meetings happening when someone could just pick up a phone, and it's a case of saying, well, actually, I'm happy on just picking up a phone. We don't need a Zoom meeting for that, or we don't, so it's maybe drawing that back a little bit. Or
I saw a really funny meme the other day that I'm probably going to get wrong when I try and say it off the cuff, but it was like 2019 was like, this meeting could have been a Zoom, then 20 whatever was, I can't remember how it goes. I'll have to send it to you. But it's like this evolution of how meetings are. Like this meeting should have actually just been a Slack channel or whatever. I kind of think a meeting isn't a meeting unless you have an agenda, you have minutes, you have outcomes, and you have food or some kind of snack. So, I think two people got into this space where they really wanted to try and get their teams to connect. So it became this weird meeting/drinks thing where we were desperately trying to stay connected, and that just doesn't wash for a lot of people. But I think we really have to rethink why we meet and how we meet. And generally what I'm working on with clients is a thing called a social contract. So what are our kind of understandings of, the email signature that we have, all of our kind of slightly nuanced different ways of communicating? How do we actually lay that out, especially when you're working with clients? That there are clear expectations and there are clear rules, because again, I don't think anyone learned how to use email. We just got an email address and then we worked out the paperclip meant attachment and CC meant, you can add people in. No one said, if you're CC'd in, please don't reply. It's just an FYI. And it's always the person CC'd in who's the first to say, thanks, got your emails. Those sorts of things, maybe we need to sit down and really spell out and iterate and then reiterate so that we can get less of that tsunami of communication that it's really hard to sort through.
Absolutely. Well, you touched a little bit earlier on the whole notion of how we use social media to be connected. Like it's all about connection, which is a good thing. But how can we connect with people without, the online world taking over our lives, do you think?
Look, I think just geographically it depends because, if you're working with clients, I work with people all over the world. So I can't go and just meet them down at the local wine bar or cafe or park or whatever. I think where you can meet up, it's fantastic to create, again, different pockets of time where you can meet up to socialize or meet up under particular pretenses and with activities that actually you share so you have a common experience. Because I think we've worked out now, just for work stuff, we don't need to necessarily be in the same room with the whiteboard where we brainstorm. We can brainstorm digitally.
And isn't that a great thing?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, lots of people just don't want to go to wasting time getting to meetings. Like you get there, you park, you pay for parking, you wait for the person, you make the small talk, blah, blah, blah. Like that is turning in our time into confetti, and we just don't have time for that anymore. Like we're really, budgeting our time very differently. And without some of those sorts of, the transit thing, our commute, I think, is hopefully for a lot of people been rolled into our self-care practices, and certainly was something I was encouraging people to do during lockdown.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Are there some good digital tools that you use and you'd recommend? I mean, you did mention, was it Freedom and a couple of other things?
Yeah. So Freedom's a great tool. There's so many out there. Like it depends whether you want a productivity tool to kind of help you kind of track your to-do list. If you're still into to-do lists, I like a will-do list, and then I like to have a ta-da list, because we never actually do like, hey, this is what we did do. It feels like every day, what did I do?
I like the idea of a ta-da list.
So, and just tracking all of the sort of ideas that people have, especially as freelancers, if you're kind of working on stories. I at one point, wrote for the very early days of Daily Life and Junkie Mag and some of those sorts of things. So I have a folder still of all of the different story ideas, and, using boards like Trello to kind of keep some of those stories and those links and those ideas, so we can kind of outsource it from holding onto it, within our working memory, but we're not losing the great ideas and things like that can be cool. So tons of tools. I'm sure your community has lots of suggestions they can, jump into the comments and share with you.
Yeah. Is there anything else? I mean, we could talk to you all day, but is there anything else that is really important for freelancers to know about when it comes to digital nutrition? Any final words of wisdom?
Look, I think it's, just honor your own wisdom about how your body and mind works. Like you're an expert in your own productivity. If you tune into some of those things that you know about yourself and you work with that rather than working against that, because, you saw some Instagram post about people who get up at 5 o'clock. If you know that you're the person whose brain switches on at 9 p.m, don't try and be something that you're not, and choose your own adventure with some of the ideas that are out there. To not try and have a one size fits all approach to like what is productive. I think productivity, the whole notion is really, really changing. There's a friend of mine another Jocelyn called Jocelyn Brewer, whose podcast Hurry Slowly, I think is a really fantastic podcast for people who are sort of looking for ways to be productive without buying into the kind of productivity porn conversation, which is obviously about, usually about tech dudes and nootropics, and it's so far removed from women and the daily grind. It's just ridiculous.
There's the people that get up at 5 a.m, see the sunrise, have a green smoothie,
diet, have an ice bath, run 10 kilometers, all that kind of,
and clearly have never washed a dish, made a sandwich, or
after a child.
That stuff. Yeah.
How fantastic. Well, you've given us a lot to think about. So Thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge. I think it's going to be really helpful for our audience.
Great.
Who will be out there right now downloading all the productivity apps and thinking, shit, I'm turning my notifications off and all of that. But tell us where people can find you and connect with you. God, how ironic.
Yeah. Well, I'm
mindfully, of course.
And moderately.
Yeah. My Instagram, I really try to post mindfully. so that I'm not adding to the digital spam. And it's just digital nutrition. So if you type those 2 words into your favorite search engine, you will find me and my work, and then you can just kind of explore from there. Lots of podcasts that you can listen to, some resources, some new courses coming in 2022. I do actually still have a tech use agreement course. So if you've got kids and you want to work out how to make an agreement with them, on December 8, I've got a course that's 90 minutes. You get like a playbook that will take you through how to actually set up the agreement in your family. So that's coming up. Great. And then to be continued for 2022, I'm cooking up some new stuff.
Amazing.
Oh, fantastic.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jocelyn, for being our guest. It's been great. We've learned so much. And I think I feel less guilty about what I do online.
Me too.
So that's quite good. And I'll be more mindful. But yes, I do feel better for it. So that's the end of our show. But thank you to everyone who's listening and sharing us on social media. And don't forget to leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. And we've got show notes in the apps, and that will have all the links and where to find Jocelyn and how to connect as well, just in case you're out on your walk or something and you can't write it down right this second.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And thanks so much, Jocelyn.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.
All right.
See you next week. Bye.